Hello. Hi, everyone. I know it's the middle of the day. What are we doing? Well, we're going to be talking about Nightfight because I mentioned on a prior stream that I wanted to find a way to just kind of discuss more current comics in an ongoing and slightly timely fashion. It is New Comic Book Day. Today is DCKO number 3, which is relevant because this is a tie-in to DCKO, but I couldn't make it out to the comic store today, so I thought, why not take the opportunity to come and chit chat live about Night Fight number 3 and all of the emotional depth that the Night Fight series has that I think might be surprising to some based on how they marketed it, which they went for the nice SEO marketing, which makes sense, which is very much Batman fights his sons. Again, they didn't add the again, but if you've been reading comics for a length of time, you'll know that that's not an uncommon occurrence for him. But the kind of hook for this one was that it was going to be these alternate versions of his sons as adult Batmen. There were these drops of the costumes, Dan Moore's designs for them, and the build up to everything. And now, of course, in the series, you get to see them in action. So let's chat about it. I want to discuss and hear what you think and all of that good, fun stuff. If you can catch the live, great. If not, I'll leave it up and you can leave all your opinions and thoughts down there as comments. So, first, we'll give a brief primer as to what Night Fight is, because I know not everybody is either reading all of the tie ins or reading KO at all. So, Batman Nightfight or D.C. K.O Knightfight, rather. We can pull, I have images today. We have aids, visual aids. This is the cover for issue 3, Last Bat Standing. But overall, this is a series that is stemming out of DCKO and the fact that Batman was taken out, spoilers by the way for KO, in issue 1, and it was revealed that he cheated. And so because of that, he's ended up in this kind of external space where he's having to go up against these versions of his sons, which are kind of a combination of how they would most likely actually turn out and partially his perception of them and his relationship to them and them being Batman. So it's quite interesting because you can look at it from a variety of perspectives in that regard, and you can have lots of discussions stemming from that in terms of whether or not you feel the characterizations are accurate or not. Because we have 4 issues, this is a 4-issue mini. There's not exactly all the time in the world to dwell on everything. So it's not exactly one son per issue, which I think is what some people were expecting. Before I forget, you see, this is off the cuff. We're getting into it. The writer of this is Joshua Williamson, arts by Dan Mora, colors by Triona Farrell. So we started off with Dick. They go in order, and he got a whole issue. But then it bled into issue 2, which then bled into having Jason at the end. And then for issue 3, we're finishing off with Jason and then getting into Tim and starting Damian. So there is a lot to get into with this issue. But what it really leans into for 3 is they move back a lot from the let them fight energy. Not that it was very much ever there. There's only a couple of panels per issue where they fight, and instead it explores the emotionality and relationship that Bruce has to each of his children and his perception to what they're struggling with and what they would struggle with as Batman, as reflections, as kind of the negative aspects of himself, which is very fascinating. So for Jason, I really like what they did with Jason because they didn't go for some of the more obvious routes that they could have, which, is the anger, the anger and the guilt of him dying, which is something that they go to a decent amount. I have liquid. I have coffee because it's kind of like an impromptu coffee break in the middle of the day, and I'll need the energy after. Instead, what they go with is kind of Jason struggling with working with others and finding his place, and kind of the opposite of what they did with Dick, where he had done a Robin Inc. kind of thing. And they also do that by playing with the clayfaceness of it all, which was a fun kind of throwback to when Jason first returned from the dead. We first see Jason in Hush, OG Hush, but then it's revealed to be Clayface. And it was a whole thing about how it was supposed to be Jason and they changed it and all that. But it ended up being Clayface. And so they play in this series with the Jason of this realm thinking that Batman is Clayface, which is a nice flip on the whole thing, but also a nice way to bring in that whole who are you kind of aspect to it. And also just some of the struggles that Jason and Batman are going through with the idea of Jason being Batman, which is pretty interesting. We're at the end of it for the start of this one. And so basically by this point, Bruce has decided that he doesn't want to fight them. He never wanted to fight them, but he's going to try and solve this with emotional intelligence. And so he just discusses, his flaws, his foibles. And for Jason, that looks like reaching out to him and being like, we can work together. We can do this, because their relationship is usually so fraught. And it works. And they do draw all of the Bat Boys have been giving have been given quite nice elder forms, but it is Dan Mora, so everybody gets a glow up no matter what you're drawing. That's what ends up happening. And I don't have the panel here, but I can add it. I think I might, which is where he's ripped away after that, because that's where we really start to deal with a lot of the emotional trauma of this. Is not just working through it, but that we see the boys' reactions to it. So it makes these realms feel all the more real and not as disposable as they really could. Like he's just going through these kind of cardboard cutouts. And this issue brings that home the most. So let me get my one image that I want. For you can only put 10. I'm using StreamYard. You can only use 10 in StreamYard at a time. I think they know that if they just let you, there'd be people like me loading about 25 images at a time or something ridiculous. And we can't have that. So this is him being ripped away, and it's hard and it's sad. And I do like the way his cape is billowing out behind him in that panel. Also, just the Heart of Apocalypse screaming, "You cheated." There's a bit of a childishness to that that's kind of enjoyable and matches well with the tournament arc energy that's going on over in the main book. So that's the other thing. You could read this independent of KO, just with tangential knowledge of the fact that it's happening, if you're just interested in seeing this kind of little mini event unfold. They've been trying really hard to keep things pretty self-contained. I think with this mini it works, because there are indications in here, and there have been hints for a while that we're going to get Batman back in the tournament. He's just having a little a little sojourn off to the side with some emotional trauma sprinkled in. So you can kind of just do this if you wanted to. It's just it's accented if you're following along with everything, which I think is the best form for tie-in material to take. I can see why they want to do something with Batman for this time. I mean, it's Batman and he sells things. So we do get this gorgeous panel, but I just wanted to show you, just because there's a discussion between Batman and the Heart where he discusses that he's not going to play his game. He's going to win it another way. He's still cheating. You see, he's not following the rules. And so they're going to have to up the ante each time. But there's this gorgeous panel where they reference KO and what's going on there. And I think it plays even better with this week's KO, which I did digitally because I can't get into the comic shop, I think, for like 2 weeks. So you get to see a kind of a bit of a taste, a sampling of what's going on. I love the Joker in the background of this panel. I think he's really menacing and really cool looking. They've been playing a lot with Emperor Joker imagery in that, and this week they just completely went for it, and Emperor Joker is all over the place. I really like it. It's also one of the ones that my daughter takes all the time. So if I'm ever looking for it, it's where's my Emperor Joker? It's gone. But that's just a really nice panel. So let me catch up with all of you on the side. There is an option to put the chat on the side. I think I might play with it at the end and we can decide what we think looks nice and what we think doesn't. But here's where it pivots in, I think, a cool way, in that the first two issues were very much in the Batman slash Bruce dropped into these worlds and kind of having to figure out what's going on. And because by this point we know the format, we're 3 issues in, they flip it. And that makes it interesting and also adds to making these worlds feeling more fleshed out and real, even if this one does have some kind of tongue-in-cheek things about it, which is they introduce Tim. So we get to see Tim. And Tim is just basically living out Clue. He's solving this mystery, this potential locked room mystery, because he's got a couple of those to solve in this. He's also reading Frankenstein, which I appreciate. It's all those little details. But he's just going through a Clue-style mystery. They even have those names. And that's playing with the idea of Tim as the detective, but they also play with Tech Tim. Because there has long been an idea in some parts of fandom that Tim would be the one to pick up the mantle. And that's why you still sometimes, I don't think that people do it as much, but there used to be really intense fighting when Damian first came on the scene about which one of them should be Batman. And I think of all the people these days, those two are the ones where it kind of vacillates in between if people are trying to decide who they think it should or shouldn't be. So I'm curious, when this series was announced and if you were getting into it, do you have any strong feelings about who should or should not become the next Batman? I mean, in a world where they allowed the time to move on. I just also love this panel. It's a lot of fun because you get to see a bit more of this world from Tim's perspective. It made it feel bigger and it kind of made me want to spend a tiny bit more time in it than the little bit that we get. Also, that's great. Robert says he's a detective, and I appreciate that. That's fantastic. So we get some of just him living his life. We actually get to see how he's also kind of isolated himself, but in a different way. Whereas for Jason, he was actually in this big dome type thing that looked like a big red hood. Here we just have that Tim's kind of retreated into this low-key obsession that he seems to have, which is with solving Bruce Wayne's murder. Because in all of these worlds, Bruce has ended badly. That's a consistent thing for all of these. And we do get the briefest of slight battles, which is because Bruce is trying to reach Tim and apparently has been for a time, but we come in when that's finally been accomplished and he's had to hack into the system and kind of get into one of the suits and get a hologram going. We had to tech all the tech. He reversed the shield polarity. He got in there, but so he could finally discuss with him, because for this one, he was really trying to avoid fighting at all because he's very much pushing against the Heart of Apocalypse, which is interesting because in the first KO, it was Clark who was the most, I don't want to do this and go for all these no mercy type things. And now it's Bruce just folded like a cheap suit. He melted like a marshmallow as soon as it involved his sons, which is, also pretty accurate. They're really cool. The tech in this does look really nice. I saved a couple of other panels where I was just like, ooh, just look at the tech that he has. But see, I'm getting used to balancing out all of the panels. For this one, because Bruce and Tim have a really strong and kind of egalitarian in ways relationship that's different than the one that Bruce has with Dick. He can have a different kind of conversation with him. And it's just, there's just an energy to this one where, I don't know, it made me sad. It just did. So they solve the murder in record time, and also it takes them like a panel, but it's because that's not what's important here. Ultimately, they don't even tell you who did it. You'll just have to live with that locked room mystery. I guess place your bets now of who got into the Batcave and killed Bruce. I do like that Dan Mora made a really big effort to make them look different in the faces as well. You can really see it with Tim here. And there's just a loneliness to this Tim that it got to me that he's doing this and he's doing a good job and he's excellent at it, but he's not deriving the same kind of enjoyment or fulfillment as when he did it with Bruce. And there's just something so heartbreaking. He's just so happy in these panels that I've pulled up, but how they can put him in a robot body and they can just go back to to doing the Batman and Robin thing. And then of course Bruce gets pulled away because even though he solved the situation, he didn't do it the way the heart wanted. And so we have this panel, which is just devastating to me. The I don't want to do this without you panel. It was this panel that ignited the I really want to talk about this more in depth because I don't think many people were expecting it to kind of go in this direction. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Maybe this is exactly what people were expecting. But for me, it definitely leaned more into the emotional aspect than I was anticipating going into it. And for me, I appreciated that very much. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point that Tim looks like Robin in that panel, and I think that really works for what they're going for in that even though he's assumed the mantle, he still hasn't fully left that headspace of really wanting that dynamic that they had. And that's just again an interesting thing to explore that they don't have a lot of time for because we are doing kind of a cliff notesing version. I did see some people online saying, "Ooh, it would be so fun if you could expand on these a little bit more." And I think that's also a way to show when something is having a bit of an impact because if people want to expand it out a little bit, always leave them wanting more, I guess. Although I can also see some being a bit disappointed that they didn't get more Tim. And there is also always a discussion, again, also stemming from the displacement of Tim with the arrival of Damian, that they're not really sure what to do with him. I mean, you also hear that conversation around Jason a decent amount, but there is this idea that Tim kind of is falling into that era of heroes like Tim, and even though Tim is around like Kyle, Wally, where they had these really big moments and then kind of got pushed back. And so for some, I think that maybe how little of a time he got in that might draw that forward, that once again, they're not giving enough love to Tim. But also his time was really impactful. So I'm curious what you think about that. I know Alvin just woke up apparently. He's like, "You're talking about Nightfight without me?" I may let him in. We'll see. He's been quite rowdy. He knocked over the entire camera setup earlier. He cannot be trusted. So we'll have to see. So because we are moving at about Mach 5 in this issue, we also get to see Damien. And Damien's going to be most likely the one that might hit the hardest because they just went right for the feels in a couple of ways, which are no, not that one again, even though it's equally sad. Which are that they present a scenario where Damien knows what's going on. And so then if Bruce makes a decision to kind of end this, he's going to have to do it in a way that the person is aware that they are being unwritten and that their reality is being unwritten. So that adds another level to it. And then to hit you right with everything that's going on, They introduced the idea that Damian he's settled. He's got a kid who he named Alfred, of course, in deference to the really good relationship that he had with Alfred. And of course, they're like, let's make it the most adorable child that we can. The end text that got cut off when I screen grabbed from my Kindle was the it's Batman versus happiness, or Bruce Wayne. It's Batman versus happiness at the end, which is a theme that can recur and run through a lot of Batman comics in general, and now something that he's going to have to confront in his son is that is he going to be that person who's going to take that happiness away? And then whenever I hear Batman versus happiness, I always think of the scene from Mask of the Phantasm, the DCAU film, where after he's fallen in love with Andrea and he goes to his parents' graves and is begging them to let him forget the vow that he made because he didn't count on being happy. And so it's this idea that floats through the comics sometimes of, can Batman exist in a world where Bruce is happy and fulfilled? And so then we're going to have to play with that a little bit with our Damian. So it definitely made me want to pick up the last one, even though I'm probably going to be dealt a lot of emotional damage by everything. But overall, it's been much more deep of a little mini than I anticipated going into it. And I would have probably been pretty satisfied if it was just let them fight, let them fight side jaunt. But the fact that it's not is a good time. I'm definitely going to pick it up in trade. If Because even if it hadn't ended up going in this more in-depth direction, the art's still gorgeous for everything. It's beautiful to look at. Oh, I see a bunch of you speculating with who is the mother. Can you imagine if they brought back Flatline? It's been so long. It's been ages, and I'm still not over how that one video got demonetized. But it would, yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe they just won't mention it. We'll leave the face blank so that we can place our bets for later on. One of the other things that this issue did was it did have this really nice big like splash page of different characters who could also have been Batmen and women that he faced. And a lot of them were people that people had been asking for and discussing a little bit on the periphery as to how they should have been included, or would have been nice if they had gotten a mention. And so we do get to see that, which is this one. And this is just, I mean, it put me in the mood to look at a whole bunch of different Batman designs. That's how we got the Night Gallery short, because there's, gotta look at Batman designs. And I remembered that there was a whole book that was just that. Although I don't know how I feel about Steph's, especially because we kind of got a version of like a future version of Steph at the end of the Stephanie Brown series, which is a fantastic series and definitely worth reading for sure. But of these, like seeing Azrael too down there in the center is like, wow, someone remembered and cared enough to include Azrael. Is there anybody that they missed after seeing this whole panel? They're like, still not there. I think maybe Harper Row. I think I saw some people be like, still not acknowledging Harper. Ben Chan is saying, oh, look, Duke exists. I know, right? Look at him. They put him like extra big to be like, look at him existing outside of the Bruce Wayne family adventures where he got to have a whole arc and everything. Chris is saying, where's Batman ink? Maybe like next time we'll have to add in some more pages to the next book. But overall, what are your thoughts about this series, and have you been enjoying it? Have you been reading it in conjunction with KO or just off as its own little thing? And if you have been reading it together, has it been enhancing everything for you? Has it made you look forward to when Batman makes his way back into everything? Ooh, Tevya, good point. Tevya is saying, "Where's Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond?" I can tell you where he's not in Justice League Unlimited. I was so excited when I saw Batman Beyond on the covers for some of those, but it's the Tim Batman, which, some people really enjoyed that DCU kind of outing with Tim as Batman Beyond. It's not for me. For me, Batman Beyond needs to be Terry. That's true. He is with Static Shock in their crossover that's going on. Mm. So I'm seeing how some of you are reading it. Mm. Senzanome is saying that they feel that the story has problems with the facts. Let me know, like, again, are there any points of the characterization where it doesn't land? Because I can see that being something that would really take somebody out of it if they feel that the characters are kind of being reduced, because that was one critique I remember seeing from the first issue, which I did do a full length scripted video on, which was that they had just become the Ninja Turtles. They're like, oh, look, they're the Ninja Turtles. He's the smart one. He's the this one, and all of that kind of thing. I think they're just trying to keep everything as streamlined as they can with how short of a series it is, and I'm kind of enjoying getting the sense that I'm getting a lot going on. I'm kind of enjoying the pullback from the extremely decompressed storytelling that had been going on for several years, but then it's just the question of making sure that on top of pacing and doing a lot of things, you're getting some depth in there with that increase of speed with the pacing. And I feel like a bunch of the books definitely are. Mr. Sam Hawkins is saying, I'm reading the tie-ins and Nightfight is the most engaging, to be honest. I was really down with the Flash one, but the balance of that one keeps bouncing back and forth. The Justice League Unlimited one is just trying to ignore it as much as possible with its little sojourn trip into hell. And then Superman's, of course, has to be integrated because it's so integral to his story and where he's going to end up, because we already know, spoilers for people who don't, that by the end of this we're going to end up with Superboy Prime as Superman for a little bit. So they're said that's part of why he's kind of hovering around, to kind of get you used to the Superboy Prime of it all that's going on over there. You see all of your chats. I'm pleased that there are so many of us here randomly in the middle of the day. Also, that did not take quite as long as I anticipated, since this is kind of a tester for me for this format and seeing how much we can and can't discuss in the time period. Perhaps this is an indication that we can maybe like hedge on having maybe 2 issues of something to dive into, just in case. Because while it is intriguing to ponder a lot of the character work going on in terms of Night Fight, it's also a very snappy, kind of quick, you can get through it very quickly, brisk read. And it's just those moments, if they connect with you, that can kind of arrest you and hold you in place for a moment of, oh. It's just also nice to see Batman's relationship with his sons taken seriously, which it can and it can't be. Sometimes it'll go off the rails when they mine it for cheap pathos. So it's kind of nice to see it explored a bit more gently, even if it is in this random offshoot DC KO tie-in. Justice Dennett, thank you very much. Digging the live, keep it up. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We are hopefully going to do more lives like this. I had to pep myself up a surprising amount. I don't know why. I was so nervous. It's like, oh, it's different. It's something different. I know initially I was going to propose a vote for what we were going to do, but I decided just to dive in with something that I knew that I liked. Also, but I figured it would win based on what I was going to put it up against, which was like the Twilight Zone #1. and Absolute Superman 15. Although there was a chance for Absolute Superman 15. And it doesn't mean that we can't do either of those things, because I definitely want to talk about the Twilight Zone comic series that they're releasing, and like any excuse to talk about the Twilight Zone, really. Fumo Chabala, thank you very much. Would you ever want to cover New Frontier? Oh, all of New Frontier? New Frontier would be fun. New Frontier would be a good time. What I would love to do is cover New Frontier in contrast to something else, just because it's got such a different energy than some of the other comics. It's like almost like an anti-Golden Age in some ways. So that's really interesting. Just like Golden Age is a good examination of Elseworlds Watchmen. So there are so many different avenues to take these discussions down. And that's part of why I'm excited about this, because it frees up time, space, allows us to be a bit more interactive with each other. Speaking of, let me show you the little feature they've added on here, and you can tell me what you think looks nice or doesn't. So look at that. We can put it on. We can put it on. We can make it. We can put it little in the corner. We can make it taller. We can make it wider, which I don't like. I don't like wide. I think tall. And we can make the text bigger. Well, that's too big. I like small, actually. I kind of like the when it's peeking in the corner like that. Just so that's another way that people can see it who are watching along. They do have a live replay in the YouTube form, but you have to pull it up. And I know not everybody does that. Yeah, tall, dark, and commenty. I think the tall and dark works. I like that it's off into the corner. It activates a little bit of my cyberpunk kind of pullback, just in the sense that whenever you read, Neuromancer, Tokyo Ghost, anything like that, there's always these discussions about how everything's just kind of cacophonous and happening at the same time. Like the way Neuromancer describes the Matrix, and it's just this kind of constant flow of almost what we would now call kind of like an augmented reality stream of everything happening past you. This little flow, even though it's not too obtrusive, does remind me of that, because it just reminds me of how everything is on a screen now, and a screen isn't just a screen by itself. At the same time, I think it looks good. So like maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe it wasn't as dystopian as it seemed. Maybe at least that part of it. So here's a query for all of you, a question. Riddle me this, not riddle, but neither are some of the riddles they give the Riddler. What would you want the series to be longer? Or do you think 4 issues is a good length for it, so it doesn't wear out its welcome or anything like that? Or would you have liked maybe one more, like give it one more, a 5, so that we could spend a bit more time with Tim or Jason, give them a kind of equal bandwidth as we gave to Dick, who got a bit more time to be spent with? Marcus is saying, yes, definitely a sequel, at least. You could do some interesting things. So they're going to reset. They're not resetting. They are changing some character status quos at the end of KO. But because we still live in the post-Omniverse era, where you can kind of play that game if you want, that all of these universes can exist, you could enter a realm where it was like, well, these were kind of real spaces. They were created for this, but they still exist as offshoots. And they could be visited briefly for some reason. You could do some soul searching with one of his sons if you wanted to, by having one of them encounter a version of that universe. If, like, again, also if it's sold, because that's also a factor in these things. There has to be interest. I see a no. We need Bruce back in K. He'll get there. He's gonna get there. KO has been interesting. That's another one that I want to potentially pull up. Maybe it'll be the next one. Maybe our next one of these can be KO number 3. Just because that's been moving along very briskly too, because number 2 was the issue where they all had to pick a weapon and get a weapon. Whoever got a weapon got to continue on. And then you had the little solo fights for some of them. And then now we're in the tag team issue where we gotta team up and get knocked out in that way. So I'm curious if some people feel that that is moving a bit quick. I see that only Bruce can defeat KO Joker. KO Joker has gone full Emperor Joker mode. Although, if we follow through to the conclusion of Emperor Joker, yeah, you did need Batman for that, but it kind of destroyed his mind. And then Superman had to come and take that from him at the end of Emperor Joker. We've talked a little bit about Emperor Joker on this channel because we covered the Brave and the Bold animated episode that went for it and did pull a decent amount of some of it and got pretty dark in the amount of times and ways that it killed Batman on screen. It's amazing what you can get away with if you do it in a slapsticky, cartoony Looney Tunes fashion. He got full on melted in acid in that series. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying KO overall. I like a tournament arc though. So I like a tournament arc that moves quickly. I like a tournament arc that moves slow. I was a Dragon Ball Z. I was about to say girly, and I'm like, ugh, that dates this video so much. But it's true. So ooh, RJ Morrison is saying Emperor Joker gave me nightmares as a kid. I can see why. It goes pretty hard. And there are some characters who are drawn purposely to be quite grotesque. So Justice Didn't, thank you very much. Interesting that they brought back World Forger and KO. If he's still around, all these realities could still be explored by DC. That's the thing. You can always keep the alternate realities around. I'm mesmerized. Now this really is. Somebody had said that it looked like what you would see in an android or robot's like cyber helmet or vision, that this is how it would look. Yeah, if we add some zooming in or something on, yeah, 100%. The future is now. The future is right now. Since I've got cyberpunk on the brain, we should talk about Rockefellers a bit more. Then we could talk about solar punk. Not enough people discuss solar punk and its offshoots. So Ben Chan is saying, after all the fighting, the DC heroes need a going to the beach arc to chill. Obligatory beach episode. It happens after exams, after a tournament. That's just what you do. You go to the beach. William Master saying, if next issue is Absolute Batman demolishing normal Joker, it would be the funniest thing ever. So, spoilers for people who are not caught up, but also they've been hinting at it for a while, so I don't feel bad mentioning it. They revealed that they were coming in issue 1. We're going to get to see the Absolute characters briefly. I mean, the KO is just about bringing in as much as they can. You have that boss battle issue that's going to be coming with all of the tie-in characters they could round up for it. And so seeing them encounter some of the Absolute universe, I think would be interesting and potentially a fun primer for when they encounter it properly, which is something that they have been seeding, but not aggressively, because at least I hope that they're going to keep them fairly separate for a bit. But the Mirror Masters and stuff have already met and the like. So there has been some overlap a little bit in the background that not everybody is aware of. And Brainiac, Brainiac's seen the other like universe and that kind of stuff. Absolute Brainiac has. Entertain me, 616. John Constantine was no help for Zatanna. She should have picked Harley or Batwoman. Happy to be a member for 3 months. They're happy to have you for 3 months. Thank you so much. And also, John Constantine is rarely a help for Zatanna in any capacity. Mr. I killed your dad. So I don't know why she maintains that. Common Sense, thank you very much. Is saying Superman fused with Shazam, the Vertigo of DC. Fun fact, Joe Kelly did Superman / Shazam fusion, Action Comics 768. That was a really cool panel. That was also, again, spoilers for people who haven't read issue 3, but you have that to look forward to. It is a really cool panel. Whenever they play with the history of Shazam and or Captain Marvel and Superman is a good time, even though we have to ignore the lawsuitness of it all that led to them being able to be together. But they have a long history, of course, of people wanting to see them fight, comparing their power sets and the like. So seeing a kind of fusion in that way of the Shazam energy augmenting him was very fun. Also, the fact that they added like the blue Captain Marvel Jr. color scheme to it is a lot of fun, because if we made it red, he'd be 2 big red cheese, and Fawcett's not around anymore. But then we're not beating those allegations, because if you go back and look at the things they're accusing each other of, it's kind of like, I can kind of see. Especially, it's really funny that they come in and say that Captain Marvel is taking stuff from Superman, when if you look at the very beginning, it's kind of like, pretty sure it was the other way around. But that was the golden age. People are just poaching and borrowing, being inspired, whatever language we need to use to make it sound good. It was an interesting time. Ben is asking, have we ever gotten a Jimmy / Shazam? Seems like something he'd do. I mean, it seems more likely than Carnage and Jimmy, which we're going to get, because it's just going to be crossover central in 2026, apparently. I'm curious how many people are going to keep up with all of those crossovers. Their lack of immediate digital release does kind of, it makes me put off talking about them, and then sometimes we don't get to it. But maybe that's what this can be for. So again, another question. So what kind of comics would you like to talk about on here? When I discussed it on the last stream, I got a couple of pings or reach outs, pokes for the indies. And I think that would be fun, because there's a lot of really cool indie work out there that doesn't get a lot of attention. But when you do highlight it in a single video, it's just not something that people are looking for. So it's not surprising when it doesn't get picked up, because people don't know what it is. So this might be a kind of happy medium to be able to do that. Oh, the current Supergirl run. We got another issue of Supergirl today. So I think, So in the comments of this stream, feel free to like drop what you're reading and what you think would be fun to discuss with some other people, whatever it is. Like, I'd love to hear it. That's one of the fun things, is being recommended things to read. And it doesn't have to be right now either. We don't have to be, contemporary or keeping up with everything. It could be something that you picked up from ages ago that you want to talk about. So, let me know. I'm open. This is a conversation. It's one of the things that I love about YouTube, is the interactivity of it all. So the more that we can do that, the more I'd like to. And since we got through the first one pretty quickly, I definitely think we can get, 1 or 2. We'll just have to play around with how many screenshots we can do. We'll have to tech the tech a little bit. But I mean, if Bruce Wayne's essence can hack into the back computer, we can add screenshots to the back end of StreamYard. So Chat About It saying, right now I'm just reading Absolute Batman and regular Batman. I want to get back to Detective too. One of the things that's amusing me about the fact that Absolute is getting so much attention right now is that with the mainline Batman book, they're gearing up to bring the Joker back. And they keep calling him like regular Joker, and that's so amusing to me. I'm really hoping that the name Grim that they're pushing for Absolute Joker picks up a little bit, because I do think that it suits that version of the character, and it's nice to have a single name to call him instead of having to say Absolute Joker all the time. To just be able to say Grim would be cool, and it would also help make the universes feel more differentiated from each other, which I always think is a good thing for the potential longevity and lastingness of it all. The more it can kind of cement its own identity for things, which I think it's doing a decent job of at the moment to give itself legs to hopefully go maybe at least as long as the original Ultimate Universe did at its height. So regular and decaf Joker, says Chemdog. Oh, it's Wednesday. You may hear an alarm. On Wednesday, my neighborhood enters Silent Hill for a moment. So if you hear that, that's all that is. Comrade Mime is saying grim, more like grin, because he be smiling. He is smiling a lot. That's why when they're like, he never laughs, he never jokes. I'm like, okay, well, he smiles a lot for one thing. And also in that one issue of Absolute Batman, number 11, no, I'm never letting it go. They mentioned that he jokes. I'm like, no. They mentioned that he told, maybe he only tells jokes to Bane. Maybe Bane's the only one who gets his jokes. Joke the Ripper, says Chris. Tevia is asking, do you think Absolute Joker is Pennywise? I've seen that comparison because of the whole over, forever existing evil kind of nature of it. I don't think so because they have kind of given a start this time. It hasn't gone full pale man. And the Jack the Ripper thing, as I mentioned in the last year, that was my least favorite part of that thing. But that's just my whole alternate Jack the Ripper history thing that I don't like. It's just that's purely a me thing. It did not take away from the issue. In fact, it kind of added a dark layer to it. That's just me being like, ugh, whenever things do that. And again, it always prompts me to remember the Inquisitor episode of Babylon 5 every single time. And it just the ending plays for me in my head. It's like not remembered as Sebastian, only as Jack. So common sense. Thank you very much. Nova Centurion, I'm reading. Do you think Marvel Cosmic Invasion helps the Imperial comics? I'm worried about those comics. I hope they succeed. I am admittedly quite behind on my Marvel reading. The things I'm keeping up with are much more individual, like Black Cat and Spider-Man, those kind of things. I'm less into the interconnectivity of everything over there at the moment. So although I am keeping up with what's going on with Rivals, I saw the Merc with the mouth kind of drop and it made me smile. The design reminded me a lot of that Deadpool game that it's kind of hard to get. You used to be able to get it and then they like stopped selling it or something. I'm not sure what happened to that game. But that was that game was accurate Deadpool. Let's put it that way. Yeah, the Batman Family Adventures comic is good. It's fun. Shadowbat is saying, I love people saying that the Absolute Universe is Darkseid fanfic. That is one of the funnier things to come out of this, especially whenever we see new character designs. It is really fun to see people just be like, oh, so he's just drawing baddies over there. Although the jury is always split whenever I post an Absolute Zatanna, which I really like the design for Absolute Zatanna. What can I say? I like the inversed, top mesh and all of that. And it is heavily, clearly drawing some inspo from Biker Diana from the 90s. But I don't think that's a bad thing because I liked the Biker Diana look. I loved that bob. I had that bob for a period of time. Robert is asking, are you ready for Sue to become Malice again? I'm always ready for Sue to become Malice. I'm ready for Fantastic Four things at all times. Let's see. What do you think of Null in general or issue 1? Because I didn't read issue 1. I know issue 1 dropped today, but I have not read issue 1. In general, I don't love how expansive the symbiote mythos has become. I kind of liked it when it was a bit more contained. So, in that sense, I'm not the hugest Null person, but I don't think what they've done with Null has been bad. They've done some really, interesting and intriguing kind of things with Null. That's just kind of a personal, like, oh, I kind of liked it when it felt a bit more, you know, contained and smaller. But that can be my thing with a lot of things, that sometimes that can make it feel a bit more personal, and that's a lot of where I derive some enjoyment from these kind of things, that interpersonal push and pull. Yeah, oh yeah, some people are saying Null should have stayed as a Venom villain. I saw Tevya mention the Superman and Spider-Man crossovers, which I am excited for. The facsimile of the first one came out, I believe that was last week. But it's been a while. My coffee is cold. It took too long, but at least it's not perilously swirling around like it was before. I was looking at it kind of out of the corner of my eye on the camera. I'm like, that looks like it's gonna fall absolutely everywhere. I'm stressing myself out with this coffee. The thing with Marvel's Cosmic Scape is either you're kind of really into it or not, is what I tend to find with people, because it does kind of end up veering off to feeling like its own kind of thing, which in a way it is. So if you're not drawn to that, especially because so many of the Marvel characters have that more kind of down to earth appeal, I can see why there can be a bit of a split there in that sense. I'm curious where we're gonna be with, Marvel interest and stuff with Doomsday and the like coming out. I can't say that personally I'm too enthused or anything for Doomsday. It feels like it's playing a lot on nostalgia and not in a way that's personally appealing to me, because I'm not anti nostalgia. Sometimes nostalgia hits just right, but I don't know about how everybody else is feeling with all of that, because everybody has different, relationships with those kinds of things. Common Sense is asking, which do you like more, Marvel's Cosmic or DC's Cosmic? For structure, probably Marvel's Cosmic. Familiarity, I'm just always, in general, more familiar with DC stuff because I just get really deep down rabbit holes when things are old and I need to know as much as I can, and I want to go as far as I can, which is how I end up sometimes doing these really random tangent things. That was one of the things that I did like about the ending of Grant Morrison's Green Lantern, because I had to grab some images from it for the Luma Lanai short that I made, which was some of the deep cut references back to Crises Past. Although Luma really didn't need to be in that, but she was. And so I grabbed some images for it. Well, DC's gonna bring back whatever. Oh gosh. Now I realize what you're referencing. You're referencing Hot Topic Lobo. Chris Vector is asking, should DC bring back New 52 Lobo? Because in my mind, I conflate that version of Lobo with one version of Namor that they had at one point for Marvel. They just exist almost as one entity in my mind. They had such a similar look for a little bit. Gold experience. I'm glad they're doing so much with Booster. I really love Booster Gold. He was one of the characters who I think I did one of my earliest kind of connective things on this channel. And they've started to release more of his series, which I think his series was great, the one that he had in the 2000s. So I'm really happy to see that getting released and see Booster doing stuff again. There was a time around Infinite Crisis, where there are all these hints about that Booster Gold was going to be super important, and it didn't end up manifesting. And then we had the New 52 and all of that, because Booster tends to be a character who can be very easily reset back to base. And so it's always nice to see him move a little bit forward, like they seem to be doing right now with KO. And he's a character who, if they announced one of those secret next levels that they haven't announced yet was Booster, I'd be like, yeah. Because the last one I saw was Jonah Hex. I was kind of like, but I know a lot of people were like, yes, Jonah Hex. So that's the thing. The people they're announcing now, like the fan bases that they have for them, are super passionate. So but yes, this was just a kind of proto test for this kind of format of things. I think that it was really fun. Next time, I will bring more than one comic to discuss. Leave your suggestions, all that good stuff. I'm gonna hop off and do a tiny bit of editing of scripted things, but thank you so much for taking the time to come chat, discuss, just hang out, leave all of your thoughts about Nightfight and all that stuff down below. I love reading them and hearing what all of you are liking or not liking about a series. And of course, there'll be more videos coming soon, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye. I waved and I was like, I have to click the button.